The Buddha once taught that a venomous word can burn down a forest of merits, while a wholesome word can illuminate 100 lifetimes of delusion. That is why, among all forms of karma, verbal karma is the easiest to create, but the hardest to undo. It doesn't shed blood, yet it can make a heart bleed. It leaves no mark on the body, yet it can be etched deeply into another's soul for an entire lifetime. In this ever-changing world, where every moment shifts like a breath, there are things we deem small, very ordinary, but which possess the power to steer a person's entire life in a different direction. Words are one such thing, like a gentle breeze that can carry away a flower petal, or a tiny spark that can incinerate an entire forest. Words that issue from our mouths can uplift or bring someone down, can bring blessings or invite disaster into life. In today's life, every day we face countless pressures and conflicts, from family to work, from society to the relationships around us. Amidst these jostles, sometimes just a thoughtless word can become the spark for numerous conflicts. People suffer more from words than from what they see with their eyes. Some are hurt for years by a scolding word or an insult. Some lose a loved one because of an offense. Some families fracture beyond repair due to a few harsh words spoken in anger. Words are intangible, yet they leave the deepest cuts. In the fragile impermanence of human life, we all wish to cultivate our minds to live more wholesomely. But cultivating the mind alone is not enough, because the mind can manifest through the mouth. Some people think they don't commit evil acts, so they don't create karma. But they forget that words are the most subtle form of action. A word of jealous criticism, a harsh word spoken in anger, a phrase to vent one's fury, all sow seeds of karma. When these seeds haven't yet borne fruit, we think everything is peaceful. But karma operates silently, like an underground current, until it surfaces as a flood that washes away all the good things we have accumulated. This is why the ancients always reminded us that calamity comes from the mouth, and blessings also enter through the mouth. With the same mouth, one can use it to recite scriptures, chant the Buddha's name, offer kind words, sow joy and happiness. One can also use it to sow sorrow and resentment. The mouth is the gate of the mind, a bridge from the inner self to the outer world. There is a simple story that makes many people startle into awakening. Once upon a time, there was a kind man whose life was full of adversity. He often complained that he did nothing wrong, no deceit or harm to others. So why did his life never improve? One day, he sought out a Zen master for guidance. The Zen master said nothing, just gave him a glass of water and told him to stir it gently. The clear water immediately turned cloudy. The Zen master said that the cloudiness did not appear naturally, but that he himself made it dense. Words are similar. Every time we raise our voice, we insult, we curse. We think it's just a fleeting moment of anger, but in reality, we are stirring up our own minds, stirring up the relationships around us. The man sat silently for a long time, then suddenly understood that for years he had been creating karma with his mouth without knowing it. From that story, we see that cultivating the mind is not enough. Cultivating the mouth is what is decisive. For what the mind thinks, no one has seen. But what the mouth says, the whole world hears. The mind is the root, but the mouth is the most direct expression of that root. If the mind still has a trace of anger or delusion, and the mouth is not controlled, words will become arrows that cause harm. If the mind still has a trace of self-importance, and the mouth is not restrained, words will ignite unnecessary conflicts. Similarly, a wholesome mind that knows how to use kind words, loving speech, is like a cool breeze, like clear water, bringing peace to the listener and lightness to oneself. Therefore, today we delve into this teaching to re-examine the power of words, to see why cultivating the mind is not enough, but one must cultivate the mouth, to understand that omitting a kind word may not necessarily mean losing anything. But omitting a harsh word will certainly reduce a lot of suffering for both oneself and others. In this impermanent life, where everything changes so quickly that we cannot hold on to anything, words are something that transforms even faster than the blink of an eye. A new thought just formed immediately escapes as a sound with a stream of breath. An anger that just arose carries along sharp sounds, leaving the lips before the mind has time to reflect. Like a fleeting wind, words have no shape, no color. No one can see them with the naked eye, yet their power can shake an entire human life. Impermanence in life makes us lose the things we love. But the impermanence of words can sometimes even shatter a person's heart. That is why, from ancient times, enlightened beings have always reminded us that verbal karma is the lightest to create, but the heaviest to repay. A thoughtless word can become an arrow of doubt, piercing the heart of the closest person. An unmindful statement can turn into an old wound that never heals, even if the body is unharmed. When we don't fully understand the power of words, we often treat them like leaves falling to the ground and disappearing. But in reality, words are like seeds sown in the hearts of others and in our own hearts. Wholesome seeds will sprout into trust, empathy, and gratitude. Unwholesome seeds will grow into resentment, hurt, and distance. Every word we speak carries a stream of energy. That energy is either light that warms others' hearts or darkness that pulls them into self-pity and distress. From the perspective of impermanence, words move faster than even the fluctuations of the human heart. Our bodies can restrain our feet, but our mouths sometimes cannot stop before a wave of emotion. According to Buddhist teachings, verbal karma is one of the 3 fundamental karmas created by body, speech, and mind. However, among the 3, verbal karma is the easiest to arise. This is because the mouth is the direct gateway connecting the mind and the world. When the mind stirs, the mouth stirs. When the mind is chaotic, words follow and become chaotic. Some people appear very calm outwardly, seeming gentle and kind, but just a small provocation can immediately unleash sharp words. Some consider themselves good people, doing no evil, but fail to see that the anger, envy, or discomfort within their hearts is being expressed through their daily words. The Buddha taught that words are subtle actions of the mind. They don't require hands or feet, yet they are powerful enough to create karma the moment the sound escapes. The human mind is inherently very susceptible to agitation. just an unpleasant look, an unharmonious word, an unwelcome situation, and anger begins to arise. When anger arises and is not illuminated by mindfulness, the mouth will immediately push out words full of sharp edges. The body can stand still, but words shoot forth like arrows. Because of this speed, verbal karma becomes the fastest karma to create. People may need time to act on something, but they don't need a second to utter a word. Therefore, karma from words is often created in moments when the mind has not yet returned to clarity. One thing that makes verbal karma as heavy as physical karma is the invisible harm it causes. A physical wound may hurt, but eventually it will heal. A wound in the heart caused by words is like a deep crack in a rock. The longer it remains, the clearer it becomes. The more it hurts, the harder it is to heal. Words seem to be like wind passing by, but their echo can linger in others' hearts for a very long time. A critical remark can make a loved one lose self-confidence for a lifetime. A criticism can make a child withdraw. An insult can make someone fall into despair. It is precisely because of their invisibility that words become the sharpest knife. They leave no blood, but they leave simmering pain. Why do people fall into verbal karma so easily? Because people speak faster than they think. Before a thought can pass through the filter of wakefulness, the words are already out. Before emotions can settle, the sound has burst forth. We often react out of habit, rather than observing our inner selves before speaking. In the moment when anger flares up, the mind is like a lake, strongly stirred by the wind, waves rising, water becoming cloudy, and the true image of things becoming blurred. Words spoken when the mind is cloudy are like dirty water overflowing from a cup. If the mind is impure, the mouth is difficult to purify, just as when we carry a basin of clear water in the wind. If we hold the basin very steady, the water will be calm, but just a slight shake, and the surface of the water immediately ripples. The mind is water. The mouth is the vessel. When the mind is clear, words are gentle. When the mind is cloudy, words become a knife. And if we lack mindfulness, we will not even know the moment we have turned words into harm for others. Zen. Master Linji once taught that the mouth is the gateway of karma. Those who lack cultivation use their mouths to create verbal karma. Those who practice use their mouths to sow blessings. A word can be light as cotton, but heavy as a mountain. A word can be gentle as wind, but sharp as a knife. A kind word can save a lifetime. A harsh word can destroy a human life. The Buddha also taught that if you want to know what seeds you sowed in your past life, look at the life you are living now. If you want to know where you will go in your next life, look at the words you utter today. To better understand the power of words, let us listen to the story of Mr. Men, a story that seems very small, but profoundly reflects the nature of verbal karma. That evening, Mr. Min's family gathered around the dinner table as usual. His mother had prepared a full and decent meal after a long day of tiring work. The vegetable soup his mother cooked was a little bland, just a little. A very normal thing that could be adjusted with just a pinch of salt. But as soon as he tasted it, Mr. Min uttered a frustrated remark that the food was too tasteless. The words burst out as quickly as the clash of metal. They came out completely naturally, following his habitual annoyance. Without a moment's consideration, the meal immediately fell silent. The mother said nothing. She just added more vegetables to Mr. Min's bowl and bowed her head as if to hide her hurt. Mr. Min's wife looked at his mother, then at him, her heart full of discomfort. The two children sat silently, not daring to utter a word. Everyone continued to eat, but the atmosphere was so heavy that everyone found it hard to swallow. After dinner, Mr. Min's mother silently washed the dishes. His wife went to the living room without speaking, and Mr. Min sat alone in silence. At that moment, he felt a little remorseful, but still told himself that he was just giving normal feedback, not saying anything excessive. But the truth was that the whole family carried an inexpressible sadness in their hearts, because no one wants to work hard all day and come home only to hear a judgment. No one wants a family meal to become a place to sow seeds of hurt. No one likes to be criticized with a few words uttered unmindfully. Mr. Min never intended to make anyone sad, but just a single, thoughtless sentence had made the family's entire day heavy. That is verbal karma. Verbal karma is not just wicked words, curses, or resentful remarks. Verbal karma also includes thoughtless words that sadden good people, hurt loved ones, and alienate those close to us. Verbal karma arises from an agitated mind, from ignorance. In every moment, we assume our words harm no one. Words travel faster than thought, so fast that by the time we realize it, the sound has already touched another's heart. Words are like a pebble dropped into water. Before it reaches the bottom, ripples spread in all directions. Similarly, before words can reach the listener's awareness, their emotions are already stirred. Children scolded harshly by their parents will carry that hurt for years. A spouse hearing disrespectful words will gradually withdraw. Elderly parents hearing their children's complaints will feel hurt until the twilight of their lives. Verbal karma is created out of ignorance, and no one knows when they sowed it. The Dhammapada says that people are hurt by sticks, but hurt much more deeply when struck in the heart by malicious words. The Buddha also taught that words are like honey, when full of compassion, sweet and easy to hear. But words uttered out of anger are bitter and harmful. A word can become a bridge connecting people, or can turn into a knife that severs a relationship. The Buddha taught that words represent inner quality. The wise speak harmoniously and with restraint. The deluded speak harshly and without much thought. When we delve into human psychology according to Buddhist principles, we understand that words originate from 4 types of unwholesome minds: greed, anger, delusion, and conceit. When the mind of greed arises, words become skillful pleas to gain personal benefit. When the mind of anger arises, words become sharp to cause harm. When the mind of delusion arises, words become confused and thoughtless. When the mind of conceit arises, words become arrogant, critical, and disrespectful of others. Because of this, words, which are inherently very light, become heavy when uttered from an unwholesome state of mind. To avoid committing verbal karma, the first thing we need is to recognize our mind before speaking. If the mind is angry, words easily become a knife. If the mind is sad, words easily become an arrow. If the mind is anxious, words easily become a complaint. If the mind is arrogant, words easily become an insult. The more we understand our mind, the better we know how to restrain our words. The more we restrain our words, the more we reduce suffering for ourselves and others. From Mr. Min's story, we can conclude that in all circumstances, what we need is not to try harder, but to be mindful in every word. We cannot always control circumstances, but we can always control our words if we know how to return to our breath, observe our emotions, and pause before saying something. A breath paused before speaking can save a relationship. A moment of sobriety before speaking can prevent an entire heavy day. The Buddha taught that loving speech, aingu, is one of the 4 means of embracing, a way to preserve and nurture love. Loving speech is not just saying pleasant words to amuse. Loving speech means speaking truthfully but gently, speaking what is necessary but not hurtful. Loving speech means speaking in a way that makes the listener feel respected. When we practice loving speech, we are sowing blessings for ourselves. When we utter harsh words, we are borrowing pain that we will one day have to repay. Verbal karma takes only a second to create, but sometimes an entire lifetime to resolve. Therefore, guarding our speech is guarding our karma. Guarding our mouth is guarding our blessings. A wholesome word can save a life. A harsh word can destroy a lifetime. When we understand this, we will be cautious with every word we speak, like someone cherishing each budding flower. We will speak less and listen more. We will choose peace over argument, choose love over blame, choose silence when necessary, and choose kind words when possible. To apply this in life every day, we can start by observing our breath before speaking. When we want to say something, take a pause and ask ourselves if these words are necessary, if they are wholesome, if they bring benefit to anyone. If the words would hurt someone, change them to gentler ones. If the words are just to vent, be silent and let the mind settle. If the words can help others understand us, feel at ease, or be happier, then speak them with all sincerity. Lin Ung Buddhist channel offers you a gentle reminder, like the late afternoon sun shining on water. Guarding your mouth is not to lose out, but to find inner peace. Reducing one harsh word is reducing one suffering for yourself. Adding one kind word is adding one blooming flower in another's heart. Let your words be a cool breeze, not a fire that burns relationships. And remember that a wholesome word can illuminate a lifetime of delusion. The impermanence of life is always present in each of our breaths. Every day, we open our eyes and see the faint light outside the window. We don't know that one day we might no longer have the chance to witness that dawn. A person sitting and laughing with us, who knows, might become a memory tomorrow. Even our own mind, peaceful in the morning, can immediately turn into a storm with just a slight touch on the fragility of the ego. People change in every instant, and emotions fluctuate like tides, sometimes calm, sometimes surging, never fixed. In that endless flow of change, a word uttered in a fit of anger can also change the course of an entire life, like a tiny spark falling on dry grass, instantly turning into a blaze, incinerating the things we painstakingly built over many years. In impermanence, what makes people most prone to creating karma are words spoken when the mind is no longer clear, In a moment of anger, the mouth goes first, the mind follows, and wisdom is pushed aside. We think we are defending our reasoning, but in reality, we are only releasing arrows that hurt others and cutting into our own hearts. The Buddha taught that the mind of anger is like a fire. When it flares up, it not only burns up merits, but also consumes everything we hold dear. The stronger the fire of anger burns, the sharper, faster, and more hurtful the words become to the listener. In those moments, if we can pause for a moment to breathe, to look deeply into our emotions, who knows? We might have saved a relationship, preserved a home, or simply saved our own hearts from days of regret. When angry, people often lose their clarity. According to Buddhist teachings, anger is one of the 3 poisons. It blurs the mind like mud muddies a lake. A crystal clear lake, with just a slight stirring, immediately becomes cloudy, and the reflected image disappears, even if only temporarily. When angry, wisdom abandons us. This is because the mind only revolves around the ego that has been hurt, challenged, or touched. Thoughts become distorted, words become heavy, and actions are no longer guided by understanding, but only by instinctive reactions. The danger of anger is not only that it flares up quickly, but also that it makes us believe we are right. We talk more, try to prove more, and the more we talk, the more wrong we become. The more we explain, the further we push relationships apart. Only when we calm down and look back at the words we just uttered do we realize that each sentence was an arrow shot at a loved one, and we ourselves pulled the trigger. How many lives have been shattered just by a word uttered in anger? How many families have fractured due to uncontrolled words? How many people regret for a lifetime not being able to retract a slip of the tongue? In moments of anger, words are like a sharp, cold blade that can cut a wound so deep that the listener carries it for life. A physical injury can heal, but a wound in the heart sometimes lasts for decades. Some children grow up carrying the words their parents said in a fit of rage. Some wives and husbands never have their hearts return to normal after a single harsh word. The most frightening thing is not that others intentionally hurt us, but that those who love each other unintentionally harm each other just because a word couldn't be stopped in time. In this vast stream of life, there are very small stories that can awaken us, like the story of Ms. Thu Ha, a gentle, hard-working woman who lived in a seemingly warm family. But just a few words spoken in anger brought her entire marriage to the brink of collapse. That day, she and her husband argued, a small matter, just a disagreement about who should take care of housework and who should look after the children on weekends. Like many other families, arguments are hard to avoid. However, the sad thing was that in a moment when her heart was hot as fire, Ms. Ha's words came out too quickly, surpassing the control of reason. She screamed that she had made a mistake marrying him, that if she could choose again, she would never enter this marriage. Those words rushed at her husband like invisible knives. He went silent for a few seconds, then remained quiet. That silence was not peace, but a pause of hurt. From that day on, he no longer confided in her as before, no longer sat next to her to watch TV, no longer shared the small details of his day. He retreated in anger from the family space to a place where his heart would not suffer further cuts. Ms. Ha regretted it deeply afterward, but she knew that words spoken could not be taken back. She also knew that a distance had formed in her husband's heart and would not be easy to mend. A word spoken in a few seconds, but its shadow stretched for years. Ms. Ha's story is not unfamiliar in this life. Perhaps each of us has been in that situation. Once slipped a word that hurt a loved one. Once witnessed someone's sad eyes after hearing our words. Once been angry at ourselves for not being able to control our mouths in a fit of rage. The Buddha once taught that words are like arrows shot. If not careful, they can hurt others and also harm one's own blessings. Words spoken in anger not only carry negative energy, but are also an expression of ignorance. When the mind is not clear, the mouth will not be wholesome, and when the mouth is not wholesome, karma will be sown. The Dhammapada states, "No one can harm me more than my own angry mind." Anger arising is like a strong wind blowing across a meadow, knocking everything down. A person who practices is not someone who doesn't get angry, but someone who knows to stop when angry. Just a small pause is enough to save a family, a love, a relationship. That pause is like reining in a horse that is running too fast. If not reined in, it will plunge into a ravine. That pause is like placing a stone on a fire to prevent it from spreading. And that pause is the mindfulness that each of us needs to learn. In a fit of anger, if we can be silent, we are protecting both. Silence is not patience or endurance. Silence is not an attitude of neglect. Mindful silence is returning the mind to the breath so as not to be carried away by the burning emotion. We are silent so that the waves within us can subside. We are silent so that wisdom can return to its place. We are silent so as not to turn words into weapons. Many people think silence is weakness, but in reality, silence in anger is a manifestation of wisdom and self-respect. Only those strong enough dare to stop. Only those who understand enough know that speaking another word at this moment will only make things worse. Someone once asked how to be silent when angry because emotions are so strong at that time, and the mouth just wants to react immediately. The Buddha taught that when the mind is agitated, return to the breath. The breath is like cool water. When we bring our mind to the breath, the fire of anger will subside. Try inhaling very slowly and exhaling very gently. Inhale, feeling the cool air enter the body. Exhale, letting go of the heavy stone pressing on the chest. Just a few breaths, and you will feel your mind soften. When the mind has softened, words will also be gentler. Remember that the person facing you at that moment is not an enemy. It could be the person you love most. It could be the person who has gone through so many difficulties with you. It could be the person ready to sacrifice for you. Don't let just 1 minute of anger destroy those beautiful things. In life, there are words that have caused someone to stop sharing with us. There are words that create distance. There are words that make the person facing us close the door to their heart. But what we don't know is that they carry that wound in their heart, like carrying a stone of simmering pain. We can regret for a lifetime a word spoken in a few seconds. The biggest lesson from everyday stories is that when anger arises, wisdom is no longer present. If we speak at that moment, we will be wrong. If we argue at that moment, we will be hurt. If we react at that moment, we will destroy many things that we will regret later. Silence is a form of compassion. Compassion for others and compassion for oneself. Those who know how to be silent when angry are those who know how to preserve blessings, mind, and happiness. To apply this in life, whenever you get angry, stop and breathe. Place your hand on your chest to feel how fast your heart is beating. Close your eyes for a second so as not to see the person in the version that makes you most angry. Step out of the conflicting space to give your mind some room to breathe. Remember that words should only be uttered when the mind has returned to peace. Because when the mind is calm, words will be wholesome. When the mind is clear, words will be peaceful. When the mind is complete, words will heal instead of hurt. When you know how to stop, you have taken a long step on the path of cultivation. Not cultivating in a temple, not bowing much, but cultivating right in daily life. Cultivating in every breath, cultivating in every word, cultivating in every fit of anger. This is true cultivation, because it happens right in the most difficult moments. People often say, cultivate the mind, but cultivating the mouth is equally important, even more practical in family life. A kind word can save a life. A mindful word can preserve a home. A moment of silence in anger can open up an entire sky of peace. In the end, what we want is not to win an argument, but to maintain peace in our hearts and love between people. No one gains from a harsh word. No one is happy when they make others sad. No one is proud when they win an argument, but lose a loved one. May you remember that every fit of anger can become a bridge leading us to awakening if we know how to stop. The breath is the safest refuge. Silence is a gift we give ourselves. Compassion is the guiding light. Return to your breath whenever anger arises, and you will see your heart expand, lighten, and brighten. And when you know how to be silent in anger, your life will be light as wind, your heart soft as water, and the light within you will shine on others. Peace will come as a gift for those who know how to guard their words. This life always operates according to the law of impermanence, like clouds floating in the sky, constantly changing shape with every gust of wind. In the morning, the sun may rise brightly, but in the afternoon, it can plunge into a thunderstorm. People are the same, sometimes bright, sometimes dark, sometimes gentle, sometimes angry, sometimes loving, sometimes furious. Nothing remains still. There are days when we are light as a flower petal. Just a small compliment is enough to make our hearts radiant. But there are also days when we are fragile as a dewdrop. Just a hurtful word is enough to make our hearts wither. The truth is that the human body can grow year by year, but the heart sometimes carries wounds that never fully mature. Sometimes, just a word uttered thoughtlessly in a moment of fatigue can sow deep pain in someone's heart for a lifetime, like a bad seed falling to the ground and silently growing into a bitter plant. In that impermanence, words have immense power. They can uplift a soul or tear apart a childhood. Some words pass by the ear and disappear like wind sweeping over a lake. But other words fall straight into the heart, silently sinking to the bottom and remaining there, never dissolving or disappearing. The speaker sometimes only wants to alleviate their own suffering, but the listener carries that word like a permanent scar that never heals. The Buddha taught that words are one of the most powerful karmic forces. Verbal karma is unseen, untouchable, yet sharper than any knife, heavier than any stone, and leaves deeper traces than any physical wound. A cut on the skin can heal in a few days, but a cut in the heart can sometimes be carried for an entire lifetime. When we talk about mental wounds, we often don't realize that most of them originate from our closest loved ones. Words from strangers don't hurt us as much as words from parents. An outsider's sarcasm doesn't make us feel as hurt as a loved one's reproach. The deeper the love, the easier words can hurt. And children are even more fragile. A nascent soul is like a freshly bloomed flower. Just a strong gust of wind is enough to make its petals fall. Children are unable to understand that adults sometimes speak words not from their hearts, but from fatigue, suffering, or life's pressures. Therefore, they believe everything that is said. And when that word sows in a child's heart a false belief that they are a burden, a nuisance, something that shouldn't exist, then that child's childhood will grow up in feelings of inferiority, fear, and lack of self-confidence. In the human subconscious, every word leaves a trace. A loving word leaves warmth. A harsh word leaves coldness and confusion. According to Buddhist teachings, the human mind is like fertile ground. The words we speak sow seeds into the listener's mind. Wholesome seeds will grow into flowers and fruits of peace and joy. Unwholesome seeds will grow into suffering and doubt. Speaking is sowing. Sow good, reap good. Sow pain, reap pain. But the tragedy is that many people speak unmindfully, sowing seeds when their mind is agitated, confused, or gloomy, thereby unintentionally sowing very painful seeds in the hearts of loved ones. The story of little Hu Kang is a clear example of mental wounds created by just a thoughtless word. Little Hu Kang was a well-behaved, gentle, and quiet child. He lived with his mother, Miss Lan, a strong woman who had to cope with a lot of pressure. Her husband left when Kang was too young. Ms. Lan was both father and mother, struggling to make ends meet and trying to keep her home from falling apart. Every day, she ran constantly, going to work in the morning, selling goods in the evening, then cleaning and taking care of her child at night. The hardship wore her down little by little. This woman had no one to lean on, no one to share with, so when life squeezed too much, she became tired and easily irritable. One evening, after a long, hard day, Ms. Lan had just received news that she had to pay additional tuition fees for her child. At that very moment, there was no money left in the house. The pressure was like a rock pressing on her chest. At that time, little Kang, not understanding the situation, innocently asked his mother, "Mom, why haven't you bought me the toy I've been waiting for so many days?" Her mood already taut as a string, Ms. Lan lost her composure. She blurted out, "Having a child is truly a burden." She spoke out of weariness, in tears, feeling like a failure to herself. But the 6-year-old boy could not fully understand all that. He only heard those 3 words: a burden. The whole world in the child's heart suddenly darkened. He fell silent. He avoided his mother's gaze. and he believed that he truly was a burden. From that day on, little Kang smiled less. He began to be afraid of making mistakes, afraid of bothering his mother, afraid to ask for anything. He thought he was the reason his mother suffered. Although Ms. Lan loved her child boundlessly, that single sentence had sown a very deep seed of inferiority in her son's heart. As he grew up, Kang became a withdrawn person, often blaming himself, and always feeling that he was not good enough. He always tried to do everything perfectly, so as not to disappoint anyone. But that effort was built on fear, not on love. It wasn't until he reached adulthood, when he understood life enough and looked back at his mother's hardships, that he realized his mother back then was just too tired, too miserable, too lonely. That sentence was not the truth about his worth, but just the desperate cry of an exhausted mother. But even with understanding, the wound remained. It did not disappear just because reason became clear, because it had once been sown in the tender heart of a child. This story makes us realize that words not only go into the ears, but go straight into the heart. Ears hear and forget, but the heart hears and remembers for a very long time and very deeply. According to the teachings of the Buddha, the human mind has the ability to retain all emotions that have passed through it. Every word carries the energy of the speaker, and that energy enters the listener's mind and transforms into a seed. If it is a wholesome seed, the mind will grow healthy. If it is a seed of suffering, the mind will carry the wound. Some people grow up full of self-doubt, just because their parents once said, "You can't do anything." Some people never dare to dream higher, because they were once told, "You are so incompetent." Some people live their entire lives in inferiority, because they once heard the phrase, "You are a burden." These words may have been spoken only in a moment of impulse, but their effect lasts like an echo. The Sutta Nipata states, "Kind words beautify both one's own mind and the minds of others." The Buddha repeatedly emphasized that the mouth is the gateway of karma. Just one unmindful word can harm one's own blessings. Words are an action of the mind. When the mind stirs, words stir. When the mind is at peace, words are at peace. When we look at a child and say that they are a joy or a burden, those words will penetrate deep into their character. Children trust adults absolutely. Children do not have enough wisdom to distinguish which words are spoken in joy and which are spoken in anger. Children believe everything. So when they receive a painful word, their heart tears very deeply. But human life is not only about suffering. It also offers opportunities for healing. The important thing is to recognize the origin of that wound, to know how to resolve it. According to Buddhist teachings, to resolve suffering, one must look at its cause. Healing must begin with understanding. When Kang understood his mother's suffering, his heart softened. That understanding was like a drop of water soaking into dry earth, making the cracked earth soft again. When we understand that the speaker is also suffering, we will no longer hold on to the wound. The Buddha once taught that anyone who hurts us is only hurting because they themselves are in pain. A person with inner peace would never use words to hurt anyone. Only those who are under pressure, worried, powerless, or suffering easily utter sharp words. When we look at the person who caused us harm with eyes of understanding, we will see that they too are only victims of their own ignorance and suffering. That understanding opens the path to forgiveness. Forgiveness is not forgetting, but not allowing the pain to continue to imprison our minds. In the process of healing, we also need to learn to look back at ourselves. Sometimes we too have unintentionally said words that hurt others. Sometimes we too have been like Ms. Lan, too tired to control our mouths. Recognizing this helps us to live more carefully, more mindfully in every word. We cannot change the past, but we can choose the present to sow wholesome words. From Hu Kang's story, we learn that words can become darkness or light in a child's life. A word of encouragement can open the door to the future. A harsh word can close many doors in the soul. Words carry karma and also carry blessings. Sowing words of love is sowing blessings. Sowing unmindful words is sowing karma. In life, to avoid causing further mental harm to others, we need to learn the art of speaking with mindfulness. Before saying a word, ask yourself, will this word make the listener sad? Is this word necessary? Can this word be said in a gentler way? When we place a breath between thought and word, we avoid many mistakes. When we know how to pause for a second, to carefully observe our emotions, we protect the heart of the person facing us. For existing mental wounds, the best way to heal is to understand oneself and understand others. Understand that children do not deserve to hear words that hurt them. Understand that adults are sometimes also victims of life. Understand that the person who spoke the hurtful words may not necessarily have wanted to hurt us, but simply did not know how to overcome their own suffering. Understand oneself not to blame. Understand others to easily forgive. Forgive to lighten the heart, to apply this in life. Every day we can practice looking at our loved ones with eyes of compassion. Try to put yourself in the speaker's shoes. Try to think about how much pressure they had endured before saying that sentence. Try to say, "I'm sorry," when you unintentionally cause harm. And try to use kind words to make up for past shortcomings. Every loving word we speak today is medicine that heals old wounds. Words can save people or hurt people. Therefore, every day, choose to sow words of love. Let our words be like a cool breeze that soothes the heat of life. Let our words be like a light that helps someone step through the darkness in their heart. The Zen Buddhist channel sends you 4 gentle messages. Speak what lightens the heart. Let words be accompanied by love. Let every utterance carry mindfulness. And remember that a kind word can change an entire human life. Life is like a morning covered in thin mist. Everything comes and goes quickly, like gusts of wind passing through leaves. Humans living in this earthly existence are but tiny specks of dust in the vast expanse of time, present in life for a few decades, then returning to the earth and sky, like a still lake with just a single leaf falling. The surface will ripple and spread into waves. Human words are the same, just a slight disturbance, a sound bursting from the lips, is enough to change someone else's entire clear day. Impermanence always reminds us that everything is passing in every breath. But human words often move faster than consciousness, causing us to hurt others countless times without even realizing it. Some say cultivating the mind is most important, but if the mind is not yet pure, The mouth is where the mind is most quickly revealed. Therefore, there is a saying that cultivating the mind is not as effective as cultivating the mouth, because the mouth is the gate of karma. Opening up wholesome or unwholesome karma both originate from here. People often think that as long as they don't hit anyone, don't steal, don't cause major trouble, then they are kind. But there are wounds that do not bleed, do not mark the skin, yet can cause a person to suffer to the very depths of their soul. These are wounds caused by words. A word uttered, seemingly harmless, can make a person collapse, make a home cold, or make a child carry an inferiority complex for life. In Buddhist teachings, verbal karma is considered one of the 3 most important karmas. Because physical evil still requires action, evil thoughts can still be unformed. But evil words only need a moment of laxity to be uttered immediately. The Buddha once taught that words are like arrows that, once shot, are difficult to retrieve. That arrow can hit another's heart, and incorrect words can pierce their soul. Verbal karma is not just slander or insult, but also includes the habit of complaining, criticizing, sowing sadness, or speaking unpleasant words that cause others to lose faith and peace. There is one thing that many people do not realize. Sometimes we commit verbal karma not out of malice, but out of ignorance. If the mind is not clear, words will not be clear. When the inner self is full of sorrow, words will also be gloomy. When the heart harbors anger, words will carry heat that tears at the listener's heart. When the mind is tired, words are easily sour. When the mind is anxious, words are easily negative. Just like clear water in a glass, with just a gentle stirring stick, the water will turn from clear to cloudy. Our mouth is that stirring stick for our own mind and for the minds of others. If our mind is not clear inside, our words will make others even more cloudy. The story of Mr. Trong below is a very close illustration of this. A seemingly ordinary story, but containing a profound lesson about cultivating the mouth and looking back at oneself before uttering any word. Mr. Trong is a 40-year-old man living in a small alley with his wife and 9-year-old daughter. Everyone in the neighborhood thought he was kind. He had never hit anyone, not caused major conflicts, not argued loudly. He went to work regularly, came home on time, didn't drink, no vices. He himself believed he was a kind person. But there was one thing he didn't notice. Every day, he sowed sadness in the hearts of his loved ones with his own words. He didn't yell, but he often grumbled. He didn't curse, but he often criticized. He wasn't harsh, but he often sighed, often said things that hurt listeners who dared not respond. Whenever his wife cooked something a little different from his taste, he immediately criticized. Whenever his daughter brought home a score of 9, he said it should have been 10. When his wife asked for a small opinion, he replied in a somewhat annoyed tone. He thought these were just normal, completely harmless words. But in the hearts of the listeners, they accumulated like an endless, sad rain. His daughter became afraid of her father, even though he thought he had never done anything excessive. His wife became quieter than before, hesitant to express herself, hesitant to share, for fear of endless criticism. Every evening, the atmosphere in the house became heavy, like it was about to rain. No one dared to talk much, because talking much would invite disheartening words. He still thought he was good, thought he was kind, but the hearts of those next to him grew colder, like a room long closed to sunlight. One day, through a colleague's introduction, he followed a friend to visit a monk. After their conversation, the monk told him to sit down and gave him a glass of clear water. The monk took a small stick and gently stirred the water. In just a few seconds, the water became cloudy. The monk said that this water was originally clear. Just a slight disturbance was enough to make it cloudy. The monk looked at him and said that his mind and his family's mind were also like that glass of water. Everyone's mind has a clear part, but the words repeated every day, even if not malicious, are enough to stir up all the sadness that lies dormant beneath. The monk continued, saying that his mouth was the stick that stirred the glass of water that was his mind and his family's. Even though he didn't hit anyone, didn't yell, didn't curse, his every complaint, every criticism, every sigh was clouding the atmosphere in the house. His loved ones weren't leaving him out of malice, but because they were tired of feeling constantly criticized. Then the monk asked him a question that stunned him. "You think you're kind, but have you brought peace to your loved ones?" That question was like a heavy stone falling into his heart. Until then, he had always been proud of himself for never doing anything seriously wrong. But he had never thought that negative words could hurt loved ones so much. He realized that kindness lies not only in actions, but also in words. Many people out there never hit anyone, yet they hurt others every day with thoughtless words. The Buddha once taught in the Anguttara Nikaya that words must meet 4 criteria to be considered right speech: truthful, pleasant to hear, beneficial, and timely. If one of these 4 elements is missing, words can easily become seeds that cause trouble for others. Because the mouth is the door of karma. A word can create joy, but can also create suffering. The wise always know to stop before speaking, while the ignorant often speak before thinking. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha once advised, "Guard your mouth as you would guard a city gate. For if the city is not guarded, enemies enter. If the mouth is not guarded, troubles overflow." Words are like wind. They can soothe the heart, but can also extinguish the light of hope in the eyes of a loved one. Therefore, cultivating the mouth is cultivating the most visible, most apparent aspect of daily life. Mr. Truong's story is not rare. Many people think they are living morally because they don't commit major evil deeds, but commit verbal karma every hour. We often forget that words are the bridge between the mind and the world. As the mind is, so are the words. If the water in the glass is not stirred, the surface will be calm. If the mind is at peace, the mouth will be at peace. But if the mind is full of sadness, dissatisfaction, the words uttered will also carry a dark hue, pulling those around into a heavy cloud. The lesson that Mr. Truong's story brings is that cultivating the mouth is not about being silent and saying nothing. Cultivating the mouth is about reflecting on one's mind before uttering any word. Cultivating the mouth is knowing to ask, will these words make anyone so sad? Cultivating the mouth is pausing for a moment, like standing before cloudy water and thinking whether one should stir it or let it settle naturally. Cultivating the mouth is knowing that family peace is built with every kind word, every gentle encouragement, every sound carrying peaceful energy. When we understand cultivating the mouth in this sense, we will see that it is not a forced obligation, but a gift we give ourselves. When we speak gently, our mind is also light. When we speak kindly, our mind is also kind. When we speak peacefully, our heart also becomes clear. Therefore, cultivating the mouth is the fastest, most practical, and most intimate way of cultivating in daily life. Let your mind settle for a moment. Remember that words are like seeds sown in the fertile ground of another's mind. What you sow will grow. Let every word you speak become a wholesome flower, blooming in the garden of the listener's mind. Let every sound from you carry the breath of peace. When we know how to cherish every word, life will also cherish us. In the same way, we cherish others. The gentler you are with your words, the gentler life will be with you. The softer you are when you open your mouth, the lighter your heart will be as you live each day. Starting today, let your mouth become the door to wholesome karma, so that every word you speak is a step towards peace. When looking at the water flowing under the bridge, we see a lesson of impermanence silently present. Water never stands still, just like the human mind, like emotions, like the fluctuations of life. How many couples once held hands under the morning sun, vowing to stay together until the end of the road? But then, just because of a few thoughtless words, a few moments of anger, a few oversized egos, an entire warm home suddenly slips away like dry sand in the wind. People often confidently believe they're strong enough to hold on to precious things, but they don't realize that what makes us lose each other is often just a word, an untimely silence, or the very refusal to be silent in the most crucial moment. In impermanence, everything can change in an instant. Happiness is like a candle in the wind. A strong wind will blow it out, but sometimes just a stray breath can make that shimmering light vanish. A home is similar. People don't lose each other due to big storms, but due to small waves. They refuse to learn how to be still. People don't break up because life is too harsh, but because no one is willing to soften their words at the right time. According to Buddhist teachings, verbal karma is the fastest, easiest to create, and hardest to atone for. Physical wrongdoing can still be corrected. Wrong thoughts can still be transformed. But words once uttered are arrows released from the bow. They don't know how to turn back and don't dissipate into thin air. A word spoken in anger can destroy all accumulated good karma. A poisonous word can hurt a loved one's heart so much that they no longer want to return. The Buddha taught that words can be a lotus or a knife. The speaker is the one who chooses whether to sow flowers or sorrow. When we don't know how to control our mouths, we unintentionally turn ourselves into someone who pushes blessings away from our lives. Delving deeper into human psychology, we see that in every argument, what we seek is not mutual understanding, but victory. Everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants the last word. The ego inflates like a dark cloud covering the sky of goodness. The more people love each other, the more easily they utter hurtful words, because deep down in their hearts, they think the other person will not leave them. But that is the most dangerous illusion. A small stone thrown into the water also creates ripples. An uncontrolled word is enough to crack the heart of someone who once sacrificed their youth for us. In broken families, many look back and sigh at a painful truth. They didn't lose each other because they stopped loving. They lost each other because they ran out of patience with hurtful words. Love doesn't die from depletion, but from being intentionally divided by words. The story of Mr. Fong and Ms. Hoa is a typical example of impermanence, verbal karma, and a lack of listening between two people who once loved each other so much they dared to leave the whole world to choose each other. Mr. Fong and Miss Hoa met in college. Back then, they were poor, but full of faith in the future. They went through rainy days together, shared every packet of instant noodles, and nurtured a dream of a small home with children's laughter. They once thought that as long as they had each other, all difficulties could be overcome. But life after marriage was not like those sunny, youthful days. Work, pressure, responsibilities, trivial daily matters wore down the lightness in their hearts. Whenever they were tired, they spoke words of blame, not love. Whenever they were hurt, they didn't remain silent to understand each other, but argued until they had their way. Their home gradually became a battlefield. From loving each other, they began to doubt and resent. From wanting to protect each other, they started to hurt each other. One evening, over money matters and how to raise their child, the two had a big conflict. Mr. Fong wanted everything his way. Ms. Hoa, being short-tempered, refused to be imposed upon. Both wanted to be right. Both refused to yield an inch. The words became heavier and more acerbic. Today's reproaches piled on yesterday's pain. Then, when both could no longer control themselves, malicious words burst out like a hailstorm on a tin roof. Mr. Fong said things that would break any woman's heart. Ms. Hoa, unable to hold back her tears and hurt, retorted with words sharper than knives. The argument flared up like a fierce storm, and then it swept away all the goodness they had nurtured for so many years. Just one night later, they decided to sign divorce papers. They didn't cry when they signed, but their hearts were torn like paper. After their separation, Ms. Hoa said something that would make anyone who heard it well up with tears. If only one person knew to be silent, to look at each other for a moment, just one moment of pause, one deep breath, one word of letting go, our family wouldn't be shattered like this now. Words, seemingly invisible, yet they have the power to build or destroy. The Buddha once taught that words must possess 3 elements: truthfulness, gentleness, and benefit. A truthful word, lacking gentleness, still causes harm. A gentle word without benefit becomes an indulgence of the ego. A beneficial word that is not truthful will make people suspicious. In marriage, words are like bricks building a house. Every gentle word is a good brick. Every harsh word is a cracked brick. If you build for years and accidentally use too many cracked bricks, the house will eventually collapse. The ancestor taught that learning silence is learning wisdom. A person who knows when to be silent is not weak, but understands that preserving peace for each other is more important than winning or losing. A person who knows to stop speaking when the mind is agitated is one who has conquered themselves. In the story of Mr. Fong and Ms. Hoa, both were strong-mouthed but weak-hearted, strong in words, weak in understanding, strong in ego, weak in compassion. And when two people are strong in the wrong way, their marriage becomes a boat sunk by a whirlpool in the river of life. The biggest lesson that can be drawn from that story is that in love, words can build or destroy a home. Love does not need flowery words, but needs gentleness. A family does not need someone to be right or wrong, but needs someone who knows when to stop. A moment of silence can preserve a home. A smaller ego can preserve a loved one. When you love each other, speak words that bring peace instead of hurt. When you are angry with each other, be silent to understand instead of speaking to win. Zen meditation teaches that to hear others, one must first listen to one's own breath. When the mind settles, we will see that what the other person needs is not rebuttal, but empathy. When the mind is calm, we will choose words of compassion instead of words of anger. Listening with the ears only hears sounds. Listening with the heart hears deep feelings. And only when we hear each other's deep feelings can we keep each other. To apply this in life, we can practice silence in 3 important moments. Be silent when angry, so that words do not become weapons. Be silent when sad, so as not to turn sorrow into a burden for others. Be silent when a loved one is hurting, so their mind has space to soothe itself. A minute of silence can save a life. A gentle word can preserve a warm home. When facing breakdowns, we realize the value of silence. Looking back, we know there were words that should never have been spoken. And when we lose each other, we understand that what shatters love is not big events, but the small words we fail to control. From the story of Mr. Fong and Miss Hoa, anyone can reflect on themselves to see that guarding one's words is guarding happiness. The Lin Buddhist channel sends you a few words to calm your heart. Before words are uttered, let the mind pause for a moment to choose what is wholesome. When anger rises, remember that love is greater than winning. When you want to say something that hurts your loved one, think of the day you might lose each other because of that very word. Timely silence not only saves an argument, but also saves a lifetime of love. All things in this world flow like water in mountain streams. No sound exists eternally, and no word passes without leaving a trace. Every sentence we utter is like an arrow shot from a bow. Once it leaves the lips, it cannot return. Life is impermanent, like a bubble, like a morning breeze passing through the Zen gate and vanishing into thin air. We come and go in a single breath. People meet for a brief moment, yet sometimes just one unmindful word is enough to break a wholesome connection. When we understand that, we realize that our mouth is a place where blessings can be created, but also where karma is most easily created. Keeping the mind calm is difficult, but keeping the mouth calm is even more so. Because when the mind arises, only we know it. But when the mouth speaks, the whole world hears. There are words that make others cherish them for years, and there are thoughtless words that hurt someone for a lifetime. That is why the Buddha once taught that cultivating the mind is not enough. One must also cultivate the mouth, because the mouth can be the door that leads us to peace or pulls us into endless suffering. In his teachings, verbal karma is one of the 3 root causes of human suffering. Lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter all disturb the mind. When the mouth stirs, the mind stirs. When words are impure, the mind becomes even more chaotic. People tend to react with words before they have time to observe their inner selves. When the mind is agitated, the mouth immediately speaks, just as when the wind rises, the surface of the lake immediately ripples. Some people think that words are light as flying clouds, but in reality, words have more weight than boulders because they can touch the deepest parts of the human soul. The Buddha taught that what you sow, you shall reap. And words are a type of seed sown in the hearts of others. If wholesome seeds are sown, the listener finds peace. If unwholesome seeds are sown, the listener is hurt, and we ourselves must bear the consequences. Therefore, cultivating the mouth is not only about correcting words, but also about correcting thoughts, recognizing subtle intentions before they escape as sounds. People often find it difficult to remain silent because the mind always wants to express itself, wants to prove itself right. If anyone disagrees, the ego immediately surfaces and refuses to back down. Many arguments in life are not to find the truth, but to see who wins. The more one talks, the further one strays from the truth. For the noise of the ego obscures the inherent clarity within each person. Some people never learn to listen their entire lives, so they are always tired. Then they blame life for so much strife, unaware that their own words create those waves. They think silence is weakness, but in reality, timely silence is a kind of wisdom. A person who knows how to listen is someone who understands life, understands themselves, and understands others. When we listen long enough, we realize that everyone has their own sorrows. Everyone has their own story that they don't always want to tell. When we speak less, we see more. When we are silent, we empathize with things that words can never fully express. Among these profound lessons, there's a story recounted through generations in Zen temples. It is the story of a young novice monk named Min-tree, who spent 3 years without speaking a single word to learn how to cultivate his speech. The story begins on a quiet morning in a mountain temple. The early sunlight streamed slantwise through the leaves, creating soft streaks of light on the ancient brick courtyard. A gentle breeze blew through the wind chimes hanging before the Three Jewels Hall, making sounds as clear as a cleansed heart. Min-tree, then only 14 years old, had a round face and eyes that always shone with gentleness, but his mind was very easily agitated. He talked a lot, was often outspoken, loved to debate, and sometimes, unintentionally, hurt others without realizing it. Once, while sweeping the courtyard, he asked the abbot why many people came to the temple for peace, yet still suffered. The abbot just smiled and said, "Because their mouths refuse to cultivate, so karma follows them endlessly." Min-tree found this strange. The abbot then said, "To understand others, one must first listen. To listen, one must first be silent, and to be silent, one must learn to abide in the breath." After that, the abbot told him, "If you wish to grow in wisdom, try to maintain silence for a period of time. Not silence to force yourself, but silence to control your own thoughts and intentions." Min-tree was surprised to hear this, but felt a little excited inside. He sensed that the abbot had seen his weakness. The abbot did not blame him, but only wished him to learn to observe others more deeply. he knelt and asked the abbot to let him try the practice of silence. The abbot said, 3 years. Min-tree was startled, because 3 years was a very long time for a young novice. But the abbot's eyes were gentle as a full moon. And the novice understood that if the abbot believed in him, he must strive. So, from that day on, Min-tree began his 3-year journey of silence. The first days were truly difficult. In the kitchen, when other novices joked and laughed, he only smiled. When tasks were assigned, he only nodded or bowed. When he wanted to ask something, he had to use his eyes or gestures. Sometimes, seeing others misunderstand, he wanted to explain. But the abbot looked at him, and he remembered that silence was also a form of practice. He began to realize that many times he wanted to speak not because it was necessary, but out of a habit of wanting to prove something. There were words that, if left unspoken, would harm no one, but if uttered, would cause trouble. He gradually learned that not everything one knows needs to be said, and not everything one hears needs to be answered. Time passed, and silence was no longer a constraint for him, but became a companion. When he swept the temple courtyard, the sound of the broom dragging on the brick became clearer. When he washed dishes in the kitchen, the sound of water flowing was like a stream. When he meditated under the Bodhi tree, he could hear even the sound of the wind touching the leaves. Everything was familiar, but now, without the noise of speech disturbing his mind, he saw life existing around him in a wondrous way. And from that, he began to observe people. One afternoon, a woman brought her son to the temple. The child cried a lot. His mother blamed him, saying he was naughty and difficult to teach. Min-tree looked at the child and saw his eyes full of fear. He said nothing, but sat down at the child's eye level. When he gently placed his hand on the child's shoulder, the child fell silent, simply by that gaze. Min-tree sensed that the child was not naughty, but just tired from being scolded too much. The mother looked at Min-tree, then at her child, and suddenly she burst into tears. She said, "Why do you say nothing, yet still make the child listen?" Min-tree just bowed his head. The abbot stood behind, smiling, and said, "Sometimes stillness has more power than 100 words." Another time, an old man came to the temple and sat on the steps for an entire afternoon. He said nothing, but his face was full of worries. The other novices were busy, so few paid attention. Min-tree sat not far from him. He didn't ask questions, didn't converse, just sat present beside him, like a peaceful shadow. After a long while, the old man told the abbot that sitting next to the young novice felt like baring his heart without needing words. He felt that the novice understood his loneliness, but in reality, Min-tree only observed his facial expressions, breath, and eyes. From that, he understood that a person's mind is like a water surface. When we are calm enough, we can see their reflection in our own stillness. And so, for 3 years, Min-tree did not utter a word, yet he understood people more than ever. He realized that people get angry not because of what happens, but because no one has listened to them for a long time. Some are sad, not because of circumstances, but because they don't know whom to share with. Some are rude, not because of a bad nature, but because their heart is hurting. When he didn't speak, he could hear their deepest feelings. The abbot said that wisdom comes not from speaking, but from listening. The more Min Tri was silent, the clearer his heart became. The more he observed, the brighter he became. His mind became light as a dewdrop on a blade of grass. In the early morning, it was so clear it could reflect the sunlight. The day his 3 years of silence ended, the entire temple gathered in the courtyard. The abbot stepped forward and asked the first thing he wanted to hear from his disciple after 3 years of not speaking. Min Tri looked at the abbot, his eyes red with emotion. He gently said, "I thank you, Master, for teaching me to understand people through silence." His voice was soft as the sound of wind, without any of the youthful impulsiveness of the boy he once was. The abbot nodded, and everyone in the temple sensed that Min Tri had matured in wakefulness. From that day on, whenever he spoke, everyone listened. Not because he spoke eloquently, but because he spoke from a heart that had been refined in stillness for 3 years. His words were few, but warm, concise, but profound, gentle, yet touched the listeners naturally. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha taught that wholesome words must have 3 elements: timeliness, truthfulness, and compassion. For those who speak loving words, their words are like cool water sprinkled on others' minds, helping them alleviate distress. The wise never speak superfluous words, because speaking a lot is not understanding a lot. Sometimes silence is the most powerful voice. When the mind is calm, the mouth naturally becomes pure. When the mind is clear, words naturally become gentle, like flowers falling on water without creating ripples. The lesson from the story of novice Min Tri is a lesson in deep insight and self-restraint. The wise do not speak much, but speak at the right time, in the right place, with the right intention. When words come from mindfulness, they become a gift. When words come from the ego, they become a knife. Whether we Bishanu bring others flowers or knives is up to us. Silence helps us observe our ego. When we are silent enough, we no longer want to win against anyone, no longer want to prove anything, no longer need others' approval. We only want to understand them, and when we understand, we love them. At that moment, words naturally become compassionate. In daily life, anyone can practice this lesson without needing to keep silent for 3 years like Min Tri. Just every time you want to say something, pause for a breath. Inhale to recognize the emotion. Exhale to release the ego. Then ask yourself if the words you are about to speak will bring peace or sadness to the listener. If the words are not kind enough, you can choose silence. Silence is not surrender, but victory over oneself. Over time, you will find your mind lighter, your family calmer, and your relationships more harmonious. When you speak less, you hear more. When you know how to listen, you resolve misunderstandings that words sometimes cannot repair. A person who cultivates their speech is not someone who remains silent their entire life, but someone who knows when to speak to bring benefit to others. Words, then, are like cool water drops on a pure and pristine lotus petal. When we speak from a heart free of anger, our words will be like light dispelling the darkness in others' hearts. Then we become someone who carries wholesome energy, bringing peace to others wherever we go. If there is one thing to send to you after the story of novice Min Tri, it is the practice of stillness. In this busy life, just dedicate a few minutes each day to sit still, breathe gently, and observe yourself. and you will find the noise in your heart gradually subsiding. When the mind is calm, the mouth will be calm. When the mouth is calm, life will have less suffering. Words can uplift others or make them fall. What you choose depends on your own mindfulness. May you, from today, learn to speak with mindfulness, be silent with wisdom, and listen with your heart. Then you will find peace is not far away. It lies right in every breath when you know how to stop and return to yourself. Then you will find every word you speak is light as the wind, warm as the sun, and wholesome as clear water. At that point, you are not only cultivating your mind or your mouth, but cultivating in every moment of this life. In this impermanent life, the things we hold on to, thinking they are certain, slip from our grasp in an instant. A leaf that was green in the morning falls to the ground by evening. A dewdrop at dawn, sparkling like a jewel, dissolves when the sun rises, leaving no trace. People are also like this. Just yesterday, we met and laughed. Today, we are each in a different place. In this flow, what we can hold on to is not wealth or fame, but the qualities embedded in every action and every word. Words, seemingly light as breath, can sometimes possess the power of a gale, felling an entire forest. Yet, at other times, they can be soft as cool water, soothing thirst in the midday heat. Some words bring joy for a lifetime, while others cause a heart to ache for years. Therefore, the Buddha taught that cultivating the mind is the root, but cultivating the mouth is an important gateway for the mind to become pure. A person who maintains pure verbal karma is like someone lighting a bright lamp in the dark night, illuminating both themselves and those around them. When speaking of verbal karma, Buddhist teachings specify 4 types: lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and idle chatter. Each type is not merely an action originating from the mouth, but also reflects the state of mind behind it. A person who lies does so not because their mouth is faulty, but because their heart is fearful. A person who engages in divisive speech does so not because they want to harm anyone, but because they are hurt internally. A person who often speaks harshly is someone who constantly wants to defend themselves. A person who talks too much, speaking useless words, is someone incapable of listening to themselves. Looking deeper, we see that verbal karma does not arise from the lips and tongue, but from inner unrest. Just as a lake, when disturbed, cannot reflect the moon, a mind full of delusions easily produces hurtful words. In Buddhism, lying is an act of misrepresenting the truth to gain benefit or avoid loss. A liar is like someone building a bridge of mud to cross a river. It may stand firm at first, but the more they step, the deeper they sink. They may temporarily find peace, but when the truth is exposed, everyone's trust collapses. Divisive speech sows discord, causing people to suspect one another. It is like dropping a small ink drop into a clear basin of water, making the entire water cloudy. Harsh speech uses words to attack, to vent anger, or to assert one's ego. It is like throwing a stone into a lake. The ripples spread, shaking the hearts of others. Idle chatter is superfluous speech, useless, wasting one's own and the listener's time and energy. It is like wind blowing endlessly in the desert without creating shade for anyone. When we delve into human psychology, we understand why these forms of verbal karma arise so easily. People are inherently afraid of being judged, so they readily lie to save face. People are often swayed by emotions, so they vent anger with harsh words. People have an instinct for comparison, so they engage in divisive speech when they feel inferior. People fear silence, so they talk too much to fill the void. All of these stem from an unsettled mind. When the mind is unsettled, the mouth is difficult to purify. When the mind is at peace, the mouth is gentle. When the mind is clear, words naturally become a guiding light. To better understand these 4 types of verbal karma, let's step into a small story that takes place in a quiet office. The office was on the 8th floor of a building that wasn't too large, but was always filled with light. In the morning, early sunlight streamed through the windows, shining on each desk. Outwardly, everyone was busy and orderly, but beneath the superficial smiles, there were unseen currents. There was Ms. Ngok, a kind woman who enjoyed telling stories in her own way. In each of her stories, there was always a little spice, sometimes a pinch of salt, sometimes a few drops of hot chili, making the story more captivating, but also causing listeners to misunderstand. She didn't intentionally harm anyone. She just wanted the story to be more interesting so that everyone would pay a little attention to her. But sometimes, from a few embellished stories, the office would suddenly become a buzz, and a colleague would unintentionally become the subject of rumors, the subject of painful gossip. Ms. Ngok herself was sad because she never expected her words to cause such consequences. Her colleague next to her was Mr. Hui. He was quiet, but easily anxious. When he made a small mistake, he often tried to hide it. One day, he missed a deadline, and instead of admitting it, he said his computer had a problem. Those words made the whole office wait for him for many hours. When the truth came out, what disappointed everyone was not his mistake, but his choice to conceal it. He felt guilty, but then became fearful. Because he was afraid of being judged, he continued to lie. These words were like vines. The more they climbed, the more tangled they became. It wasn't until he officially lost everyone's trust that he realized how much a small lie could lead to such a big consequence. Not far away was Ms. Tam, a woman with a serious face and a loud voice. She didn't intentionally pressure anyone, but whenever something wasn't to her liking, she would easily scold. One time, a young intern named Hoa, new to the job, made a mistake because she wasn't familiar with the work. Instead of gently guiding her, Ms. Tam said things that made the girl burst into tears. The girl's eyes were red, like a leaf scratched after a strong wind, which even startled Ms. Tam herself. After that day, Ms. Tam tormented herself. She remembered when she first started working, she too was yelled at by others, and that feeling hurt so much that she swore she would never do that to anyone. But when anger flared, words just rushed out like arrows, so fast that she couldn't hold them back. She realized that harsh words were not because she was a bad person, but because she lacked mindfulness in the moment of anger. In the corner of the office was Min. He was cheerful and friendly, but always talked a lot. He would tell anyone he met stories about everything, from traffic to breakfast, from last night's movie to his neighbor's cat being sick. Sometimes he wouldn't let others speak, nor would he let the space have a quiet day. One day, he interrupted with a completely unrelated story. Everyone looked at each other. No one was annoyed, but gradually, he became someone to be avoided. Min didn't understand why. He thought he was friendly, but only when a colleague frankly offered feedback did he realize that talking too much made listeners tired. It was like a flowing stream that never forms a river, only eroding the soil. The story in that office shows that the 4 types of verbal karma are not distant. They are right there in seemingly harmless words. Ngok only wanted to entertain, but unintentionally caused division. Hui only wanted to maintain an image, but ended up destroying trust. Tam only wanted work to be done well, but ended up hurting others. Min only wanted to be close, but made everyone hesitant to listen. That lesson makes us understand that words are a double-edged sword. Used correctly, at the right time, they heal. Used incorrectly, at the wrong time, they cause very deep wounds. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that one who knows how to speak truthfully, gently, beneficially, and timely sows great blessings for themselves and for others. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha taught to avoid the 4 unwholesome speech types, for they are the 4 doors to suffering. Ancestor Kui-san once reminded us that the mouth is the gateway for disaster to enter the body, if not guarded. These teachings are gentle, yet profound, like rain seeping into the earth. If we just calm down a little, we will see that the teachings of the wise are not far from life, but as close as breath. From that story, we see that to transform verbal karma, we must start with awareness. When we see our mind about to lie, pause for a moment. An admission sometimes makes us lose face for a moment, but preserves long-term trust. When we find ourselves about to engage in divisive speech, remember that one word can break or mend a bridge. Building a bridge is difficult. Destroying it is easy. Choose to build a bridge instead of burning one. When anger flares up, instead of speaking harshly, choose to drink a sip of water. Take a deep breath and wait a moment. A gentle word can sometimes calm both sides, and when we intend to talk too much, listen. Listening is like allowing the water surface to be calm. Then the reflection in the mind will become clear. When we know how to listen, words naturally become more valuable. Changing verbal karma is a long journey, like tending a large garden. Every day, we pull a little weed, plant a few more wholesome flowers. Today, we let go of an unnecessary word. Tomorrow, we speak a kind word. Gradually, the garden of the mind will bloom. A person who maintains good verbal karma will make the surrounding life lighter. They are like cool, clear water. Whoever approaches them feels at ease. Places where people maintain pure verbal karma are always peaceful places. Families with members who know how to speak kind words are always warm families. Workplaces with people who know how to speak truthfully are always places of trust. A society with many people who know how to guard their mouths will have less conflict and more love. Lin Ung Buddhist channel sends you a few gentle words to open your heart. In this impermanent life, every word is a seed sown into the universe. Choose to sow good seeds so that your heart finds peace. When we guard our mouth, we guard our blessings. When we guard our words, we guard wholesome karma for ourselves. Every word is light or darkness, both originating from the mind. So let your mind be the source of light to illuminate your own life and the lives of those you meet on life's journey. This life is like a constantly flowing river. The water is sometimes clear, sometimes murky, sometimes calm, sometimes swirling. Just like human life, sometimes joyful, sometimes sad, sometimes peaceful, sometimes stormy. No one can predict what tomorrow will bring, and no one can hold on to anything forever. Because impermanence always operates silently and powerfully. A green leaf at the end of a branch, swaying in the wind this morning, lies still on the ground this evening. A flower, full of vitality in the morning sun, closes itself by nightfall. People are the same. Just yesterday, healthy. Today, perhaps already in a hospital bed. Just the day before yesterday, laughing together. Today, already distant memories. In this incessant flow, the only thing that always accompanies us is not money or fame, but our actions, our thoughts, and every word we have uttered in life. Words are light as a passing breeze, yet they can become seeds sown in the fertile ground of cause and effect, then silently sprout, grow, and return to us when the conditions are ripe. That is why the ancients taught that words are like arrows. Once shot, they cannot be retrieved. The Buddha also taught that words are like seeds. Once sown, they grow according to karmic force, and then time will return to us exactly what we once expressed through our mouths and our minds. In his teachings, verbal karma is one of the 3 most important karmas because it directly connects thoughts and the outside world. A kind word can lighten the heart of someone who is sad. A malicious word can shatter an entire family. An irresponsible remark can cause someone lifelong pain. Verbal karma includes lying, embellishing, divisive speech, two-tongued speech, and harsh speech. Each type has the potential to create its own karmic fruit, not due to punishment from anyone, but due to the natural operation of cause and effect. Just as an orange seed cannot produce mango fruit, words originating from an unwholesome mind cannot bring wholesome results. What cause? What effect? This is a law that favors no one and is independent of time. Delving into human psychology, we understand why verbal karma is easy to create but hard to avoid. Because people are often controlled by emotions. When angry, a hurt ego makes words sharp as thorns. When overly confident, they easily disregard others and utter critical words. When afraid of criticism, they lie to defend themselves. When envious, they slander to diminish others. When curious about others' affairs, they unintentionally become rumor mongers without foreseeing the consequences. All of these stem from an impure mind. How can a lake disturbed by wind reflect the clear blue sky? It is precisely because the mind is agitated that the mouth cannot be still. Because the mouth is not still, karma arises from it. Many people still think that once their words are spoken, they're gone. Nothing remains. But in reality, it is like throwing a stone into a lake. Even if the stone has sunk, the ripples continue to spread. Words, once uttered, may dissipate into the air, but their energy remains. It continues to operate according to the law of cause and effect. To see this more clearly, let's look at the stories of Ms. Huang, Miss Thao, and Mr. Din. 3 lives with different circumstances, but all sharing the commonality of bearing the karmic fruit of their past words. Their stories are not for judgment, but to awaken us to mindfulness. Ms. Huang, nearly 70 this year, sits in front of her house every afternoon. She often watches the sunlight fall on the courtyard, her heart often heavy, like the last leaf clinging to a branch. Since her husband passed away, she has lived with her eldest son. However, the relationship between her and her children is not harmonious. Many times, her son says things that hurt her. The more she listens, the more lonely she feels in her own home. One day, she confided in a neighbor, saying she didn't understand why her children were so rude. The neighbor looked at her for a moment and then said, "When you were young, you were also very strict with your children, even scolding them harshly many times, making them more afraid than loved." It was then that she was startled, remembering that she used to say things like, "You useless thing, you only cause me trouble. I raised you, but you are so ungrateful." She said those words in anger, due to the pressures of making ends meet. But she didn't know that the children at that time remembered everything. They dared not respond out of fear, but the pain of being scolded silently grew like an unhealing scratch. Now, as they have grown up, what she once sowed in the past has become bitter fruits that she herself is now tasting. She no longer blames her children. She only deeply feels that life does not overlook any of our words. Her words from years ago were like stones she herself threw into the lake. And now, the returning ripples have touched her where she sits. Ms. Thao's story is a different kind of pain. She was quick-tongued and blunt. When she was young and lived with her husband's family, she often didn't get along with her sister-in-law. Instead of resolving differences with empathy, she preferred to tell bad stories about her sister-in-law to outsiders. Whenever someone asked, she was ready to speak ill of her, outwardly claiming to care for her brother. But deeper down, she sought attention. She never realized that those divisive words caused cracks in the family relationship. Her sister-in-law and brother often argued because of it. Then, many years later, when she started her own family, she too was divided by outsiders. A close friend misunderstood things about her and her husband just by hearing others' embellishments. That misunderstanding caused her family distress for a long time. She cried many nights out of injustice. One day, she suddenly awakened, understanding that what was happening to her was a reflection of what she had once done to others. The divisive words she had sown before were now growing into bitter fruit in her own life. No one punished her. It was simply the calm operation of cause and effect, like a shadow always following its form. And Mr. Din is a clear example of the karma of false accusation. He once worked in a large company, and wanting to compete for a promotion, he fabricated a story about a colleague, claiming she cheated at work. Although the truth was later revealed, and the colleague was innocent, the emotional wound remained. He thought the matter had passed, but many years later, when he moved to a new environment, he was falsely accused in the same way he had once accused others. People said he embezzled company funds, even though he was completely innocent. The feeling of being wronged crushed him. He suffered because he was blamed for something he had never done. Only when he experienced that pain did he understand that anyone who had ever spoken falsely about others would sooner or later have those false words returned to them. It was not divine punishment, nor anyone's retribution, but the very law of karmic retribution. He realized he was tasting the very dish he had once served to others. These three stories are not distant tales. They revolve around things anyone has heard, witnessed, or even experienced. They show that life does not overlook any word we speak. Sometimes words seem to vanish, but in reality, they are subtly at work. They remain in the listener's mind. They are stored in our own karma. And when the conditions are ripe, they will return like a complete cycle of cause and effect. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught that one who creates verbal karma is like a person carrying fire in their hand. No matter whom they intend to burn first, the fire will still burn their own hand. He taught in the Dhammapada that a mouth speaking malicious words is like scattering dirt on one's own head, while a mouth speaking kind words is like offering flowers to oneself. Ancestor Kui-san also warned that a single word can create karma for 1,000 lifetimes. The words in the scriptures and the words of the ancestors are gentle yet profound, reminding us that though verbal karma is invisible, its fruit is very real. No one can avoid it, and no one can bear it for us. Whoever sows a certain seed will personally walk to that fruit, like a shadow, not leaving its form, like an echo, returning when we shout in a valley. The lesson from the above stories is not to frighten or torment us. Buddhist teachings do not emphasize punishment. Karma is not a verdict. Karma is simply the natural operation, like the moon following its cycle, like water flowing to lower ground. We sow wholesome deeds, we enjoy peace. We sow unwholesome deeds, we receive suffering. All is logical, transparent, and impartial. The most precious thing is that karma gives us an opportunity to change. If yesterday we spoke hurtful words, today we can apologize and make amends. If in the past we lied, today we can practice truthfulness. If we once spoke divisively, today we can mend with compassion. For karma does not tightly close the door of the past, but opens wide the door of the present for us to correct our mistakes. A person who understands karma is not afraid, but is someone who takes responsibility for every word and every thought. To apply this to life, we can start by observing our mind. Every time we are about to say something, pause for a moment. Is this word beneficial or harmful? Will it make the listener sad or at peace? Will it make us feel lighter or heavier? Just a slow breath is enough to make us more mindful in choosing kind words. See words as water. Poured in the right place, it will irrigate the garden. Poured in the wrong place, it will cause flooding and damage. See words as light. Shown in the right place at the right time, it will help others see the path clearly. Shown in the wrong place, it can blind them and lead them astray. When we value every word, we will find life becomes more peaceful. Families will argue less. Children will be easier to guide. Husband and wife will understand each other better. And the workplace will become a more pleasant place. When the mouth uses fewer unwholesome words, the mind also becomes light as a breeze. When the mind is light, life is easily at peace. Lin Ung Buddhist channel sends you a few words as light as the setting sun. Karma does not punish, but is merely a mirror reflecting what we have sown. Sow wholesome words to reap the fruit of peace. Speak kind words to create blessings for yourself and for others. Every word we utter can become a flower or a thorn. So choose to sow flowers so that the path of your life and the lives of those you love become brighter, warmer, and more peaceful. Life inherently revolves in the flow of impermanence. It is truly difficult to hold on to anything for certain. Like the morning, which can be sunny, but by afternoon is full of gray clouds. Humans living in this world are like fragile flowers in the wind, sometimes beautiful, sometimes withered, sometimes fragrant, but sometimes battered by the dust of the world. The suffering we encounter doesn't necessarily come from circumstances, but mostly from our own reactions to those circumstances. Many people want to cultivate their minds and characters, but forget that cultivation lies not only in thoughts, but also in every word uttered daily. Words can be as light as a breath, but can also be as heavy as a boulder, disturbing our lives and others, like a still lake suddenly disturbed by a thrown pebble. Everyone knows the mind is the root, but few realize that the mouth is where that root is most clearly revealed. Some people say that it is enough to keep the mind wholesome, but they forget that a wholesome mind must be expressed through actions, and especially through verbal karma. Some people meditate, chant scriptures, and recite the Buddha's name every day. But when they step out of their practice, they're ready to utter harsh words to loved ones, get annoyed with their children, snap at neighbors, and be rude to service people in the market. At that moment, all their spiritual practice is like building a house on sap. Just a small gust of wind, and it all vanishes. Because blessings are not only accumulated when we chant the Buddha's name, but are also preserved in every kind and harmonious word. A wholesome word can sow blessings like spring seeds planted in good soil. A malicious word can deplete countless merits we have accumulated for a long time. The Buddha taught that the mouth is the door of karma. What the mind thinks, the mouth expresses. If the mind is not pure, words, even if thought to be wholesome, can easily sadden others. A practitioner is not someone who only bows before a Buddha statue, but someone who can prevent a word from hurting others the moment it arises. The truth that cultivating the mind is not as effective as cultivating the mouth is not to exalt verbal karma over mental cultivation, but to remind us that if the mouth is not cultivated, the mind cannot truly be at peace. And if the mouth still causes suffering to others, the mind is still full of darkness and cannot be bright. Let's look deeply into human psychology to understand why cultivating the mind alone is not enough. Because the mind is intangible, while words are tangible. The mind can give rise to a moment of anger. But if the mouth has not yet spoken harsh words, the consequence has not yet formed. A person can have a bad thought for a moment, and then it disappears. But a word once uttered will remain in another's heart for many years. The mind changes as quickly as the wind, but words once spoken are like an arrow leaving the bow, very difficult to retrieve. That is why many people think they're cultivating very well, but their lives do not improve, because they cultivate internally, but destroy externally. Blessings are accumulated during chanting, but are completely consumed when they get angry and scold their children, blame their wives, speak harshly, attack others, or make unwarranted criticisms. Buddhist teachings clearly state that if you want life to change, the mouth must change first, because the mouth is where karma is created most quickly. There is a very typical everyday story about this. The story of Ms. Liu, whom everyone in the small neighborhood knew, because she wore a blue robe every day, went to the temple to chant scriptures, morning and evening. She was considered a person of strong faith, often releasing animals, doing charity, and never missing temple festivals. But there was one thing that all her neighbors noticed. She was very hot-tempered with her children and grandchildren. Just if a grandchild accidentally spilled a glass of water, or a child came home late for a meal, she would yell harshly, sometimes banging on the table in frustration. Her words were sharp as a knife, making everyone in the house afraid to come near her. She thought it was just a little quick temper, and then things would return to normal. But the listeners carried long-lasting wounds. One day, during a chanting session at the temple, after the assembly had left, Ms. Liu lingered to ask the Venerable Master about her recent inner unrest. Despite much chanting, she was still irritable. Her family was discordant, and her children and grandchildren alienated her. The Master looked at her with gentle eyes, like moonlight shining softly on a rippling surface. He asked very gently, "What do you chant for, if your mouth still causes suffering every day?" That question resonated in her heart like a bell, making her suddenly fall silent. She realized that for years she had only focused on cultivating at the temple, forgetting to cultivate at home. She recited the Buddha's name, but let her mouth sow trouble. She read scriptures to understand the Dharma, but her mouth caused suffering to her loved ones. From that day on, she began to pay attention to every word she spoke. Each time she felt irritated, she closed her mouth and breathed as the Master instructed. Gradually, her words became gentler, her family became warmer, and her heart became more at peace than before. Ms. Liu's story shows us that the mouth is the clearest mirror of one's mind. When the mind is unstable, words will be sharp as thorns. But when the mind is at peace, words will be like the morning light, soothing the entire surrounding space. A practitioner needs to understand that if they only cultivate during prostrations to the Buddha, but forget to cultivate when they open their mouth, their practice cannot yield results. Because the mouth is constantly active every day, verbal karma is the easiest to create. Just one ill-timed word, or one unintentional taunt, can open a new stream of karma. The Dhammapada states that even if one makes offerings for 100 years, a single malicious word is enough to burn up all merits, because the fire of anger emanating from the mouth spreads very quickly. The Buddha once taught that one who knows how to restrain their mouth from anger is truly wise. Patriarch Han Shan also said that upholding the precept of speech is protecting oneself from countless sufferings. Cultivating the mind is not as effective as cultivating the mouth is true in this sense, because the mouth is the outer part that directly interacts with life. The mouth is where karma is sown immediately, before the mind has time to transform. Words have already caused disaster. Therefore, one who truly wants to transform karma must start with words. Like someone who wants to clean a lake must start by stopping throwing trash into the lake, not just focusing on filtering the water. When the mouth knows to stop evil, the mind truly has a place to settle and transform. The lesson from this everyday story is not to criticize anyone, but for each person to reflect on themselves. Many people think they're practicing very well, but don't realize that every grumble during a meal, every harsh word spoken in anger, every backbiting remark about someone is an invisible arrow shot at others and at themselves. People speak evil words and hear them pass by, thinking nothing of it, but in reality, they remain like any seed sown in the earth. If you sow bitter seeds, you will get bitter fruit. If you sow wholesome seeds, you will get fragrant flowers and sweet fruit. Life does not overlook any word we have spoken. The mouth creates karma, and the mouth must repay karma. It is not the Buddha who punishes us, but cause and effect that accurately reflect what we have sown. When we understand this, we will see that cultivation is not something distant. Cultivation is correction. Cultivation is knowing to stop before words escape. Cultivation is realizing that speaking less means suffering less. Speaking gently means life is also gentle. A practitioner does not need many words, just every word spoken with mindfulness. When we change verbal karma, we will find our lives lighter, like water flowing over rock. For a long time, eventually softens the rock surface. Our mind is also like this. If we know to speak wholesome words daily, the mind will become clear and tranquil. If you want to apply this to daily life, practice 3 small things that have great transformative power. First, pause for a moment before speaking. Just inhale, exhale, and then speak, and you will avoid countless unnecessary troubles. Second, let compassion be in every word by asking yourself if this word, when spoken, will hurt anyone. Third, practice speaking words that carry peaceful energy. Because words can be medicine that heals someone who is hurting inside. Every day, just reducing one angry word, reducing one criticism, reducing one whisper, will preserve many blessings. When the mouth knows gentleness, the mind will become calm. When the mind is calm, life will be light as a cool breeze blowing through summer. Remember that blessings do not come from how many scriptures we chant, but from how we live and speak every day. Let your words become a flower that brings the fragrance of peace to others. And when others feel peace, we too will find peace in our own breath. Finally, may you always remember that cultivation is not about becoming someone else, but about becoming a brighter version of yourself. Let mindfulness be in every word so that every sentence is a wholesome seed. Let your mouth become the door to sowing blessings, not the door to creating suffering. And let your life, from today, begin to lighten, because you have learned to speak words that illuminate your own heart and the hearts of others. In the constantly changing stream of life, no one can firmly grasp anything. Everything in life carries the breath of impermanence, like a gust of wind passing through leaves and disappearing without a trace, or like a morning dewdrop sparkling in the sunlight, then melting away as the sun rises. We, living in this transient world, often carry much suffering due to both external impacts and internal fluctuations of the mind. Sometimes we don't suffer from the event itself, but from our reaction to that event. Just as the surface of a lake only ripples when something touches it, the human mind only truly becomes weary when acted upon in ways that make it lose its inherent stillness. One of the things that causes the most disturbance in life is the words of others and how we react to them. Some choose to argue fiercely to protect their ego. Some choose silence, but do so in repressed, tormented, enduring silence. And some know how to choose active silence, a silence that still maintains their value. Silent, but not allowing anyone to overwhelm them. In modern life, everyone desires peace. But peace is not the absence of noise, but the ability to maintain stillness amidst the noise. Many misunderstand silence, thinking it is weakness, fear, or letting others do whatever they want. But according to the spirit of Buddhism, silence is not abandoning oneself, but a conscious choice. Active silence is like the surface of a lake. Even if the wind blows, the bottom of the water remains unchanged. The outside may fluctuate, but the inside remains clear and stable. A person who knows when to be silent is someone who understands that the strongest voice sometimes lies not in sound, but in composure. The Buddha taught that when the mind is at peace, words will be at peace. But peace does not mean subservience. Within each person are two parts, like light and shadow. Composure is light, while hot temper, or enduring to the point of losing value, is darkness. A truly cultivated person is not someone who says nothing at all, but someone who knows when to speak and when to stop. Because words can create karma, but silence in the right place also creates inner strength. One's boundary is not built by loudness, but is formed by clarity, mindfulness, and courage in every breath. When analyzing human psychology, according to Buddhist principles, it is easy to see that those who often raise their voices are usually people with unsettled minds. Those who often endure in silence are people afraid of offending or lacking confidence to express their views. Neither of these is true silence. The silence we are talking about is silence stemming from the roots of understanding, from deep breathing, from presence in the moment. A truly present person always knows what they are feeling and what they need to do. Their silence is not to avoid, but to preserve clarity. This is like the moonlight shining on a lake. The moonlight does not compete with the sun, does not need to create sound, yet it purifies the water. A person who can maintain their breath in a tense situation will maintain inner stability. And from that stability, they will be clear enough to say what needs to be said or remain silent when needed. There is a very ordinary story about this. The story of Uncle Nam, a man whom everyone in the neighborhood jokingly called the calmest person around. Uncle Nam spoke little, not because he was shy, but because he lived very thoughtfully. He always did his own work, rarely interfered in others' affairs, and often helped everyone when he could. People in the neighborhood gradually formed the habit of relying on his kindness. Whenever there was something to move or a favor needed at home, they would seek him out. At first, he also helped, thinking that doing good deeds was good. But over time, excessive requests began to affect his family's time. Sometimes he was eating dinner, and people would still call at his door. Sometimes he was helping his children with homework, and neighbors would still come in to ask for a ride. Others, looking on, might think he was too kind and had to endure it. But Uncle Nam was very clear in his mind. One day, a neighbor came to ask him to help clean their yard because they were busy. That day, Uncle Nam had an appointment to take his wife for a checkup, so he couldn't help. He looked at them, smiled gently, and said, "Today I can't help because I need time for my family." Those words were not loud, not annoyed, but very clear. The other person instinctively paused, sensing his composure and boundaries. From that day on, no one dared to ask him for too much. Everyone still respected him, even more so, because they realized that his silence was not weak silence, but silence with inner strength. He knew when to speak and how to speak. He maintained peace while maintaining respect. That story clearly reflects the spirit of active silence in Buddhism. The Buddha once taught that one who observes precepts does so not for others to fear them, but for themselves to be steadfast in all circumstances. Observing precepts is like lighting a lamp in the mind to walk through the dark night. A person who observes precepts has stability in both words and actions. Their inner strength comes not from a loud voice, but from peaceful breathing and mindfulness in every moment. The Anguttara Nikaya states that one who controls their speech is like someone who controls a good horse, not letting it rush into danger. Whether a horse is strong or not depends not on its pulling power, but on its control. Whether a person is strong or not depends not on a loud voice, but on the ability to control their inner self. Active silence can be compared to soft light piercing through clouds. It is not dazzling, not showy, but it has the power to dispel some of the darkness. When we can maintain our breath in a stressful situation, we maintain ourselves. The breath is the root of mindfulness. One who loses their breath loses control. Therefore, when someone says something unpleasant to us, instead of responding immediately, return to the breath for a moment. Feel the contraction in your chest, and then let it soften with a slow breath. A person who is present with their breath is not carried away by emotions. They will speak when necessary and stop when necessary. That is active silence. In life, many people let others take advantage of them because they don't understand their own boundaries. They think that helping as much as possible is good, but don't realize that helping too much will diminish their own value. Like a river, if everyone takes water without leaving any, the river will dry up. A person is the same. If everyone asks for favors and they don't know how to refuse, their mind and energy will be exhausted. Saying no is not selfishness, but respecting one's own balance. A person who knows how to refuse at the right time will be respected by others. A person who doesn't know how to refuse will create a habit for others to overstep. Uncle Nam is a typical example of someone who knows his boundaries. Silent when needed, but clear when he has to speak. The deeper we understand Buddhism, the more we see that wisdom lies in knowing when to stop. Silence is a form of stopping to perceive the nature of things, but silence must be accompanied by clarity. Otherwise, it will turn into endurance. Prolonged endurance leads to inner suffering, and prolonged inner suffering creates new karma. Therefore, silence without suffering must be based on 4 fundamental principles in daily practice. First, always maintain the breath so the mind is not carried away by external circumstances. Second, maintain presence so that when facing someone, we are not filled with fear or pressure. Third, speak at the right time, neither avoiding nor reacting unmindfully. And fourth, observe precepts to create inner rules. When we observe precepts, we naturally create a stable energy that prevents others from overpowering us. That power comes not from outward appearances, but from sincerity and seriousness towards oneself. A person who practices active silence is like a boatman on a river. They do not fight the current, but know how to steer the paddle to keep the boat going in the right direction. They are neither swept away nor stand still. They are flexible between speaking and being silent, between advancing and retreating. That flexibility creates a soft but firm strength. When others see that they are not easily provoked, not easily exploited, not easily cornered, they will naturally respect them. We don't need to strain ourselves to prove our worth. Just maintain a peaceful mind, clear boundaries, and gentle but firm words, and our worth will naturally shine. From the stories and teachings of the Buddha, we draw one conclusion. Silence in the right way does not make us weak. On the contrary, it makes us stronger. Strong from within, strong from proactivity, strong from the breath, strong from presence. A person who lives in the world yet maintains firm silence is like a great tree in the forest. When the wind blows, its branches and leaves may sway, but its roots remain deeply anchored in the earth. The tree does not need to shout to assert itself. Its steadfastness is the most powerful affirmation. If you want to apply this to life, start with very small things. When someone asks you for something you cannot fulfill, state it clearly and politely. When someone says something that makes you uncomfortable, pause for a moment and breathe. When you feel overwhelmed, re-examine your boundaries. And every day, practice a few minutes of silence to calm your heart. This silence will help you nurture inner strength, like watering the roots of a tree to make it strong. Let your silence become a gentle light, illuminating your every word and every action. Let clear boundaries define your worth, and let your breath be a steadfast companion, helping you live in the world while maintaining a peaceful mind and a clear heart. This life is as fragile as a dewdrop on a blade of grass. It sparkles in the morning, but dissolves with a single ray of sunlight, leaving no trace. We humans often forget this and constantly strive, constantly pray, constantly worry about a tomorrow that has not yet come. We walk through life like someone carrying a full glass of water, unaware that with every shaky step, a drop of life is falling from our hands. Some spend half their lives chasing what they think is important. Only when their hair turns gray do they realize they never once sat down to see the true value of a breath, of a peaceful meal, or of the presence of loved ones in their lives. Impermanence is a lesson everyone knows, but few truly grasp. It is precisely because we don't clearly see impermanence that our minds are always full of worries, our mouths full of complaints, and our lives full of storms. Only when we turn inward and look deeply into our breath do we understand that a gentle, lingering breath is the greatest gift life bestows. When we place a bowl of rice on the table and are grateful for every grain, we realize that peace is not something found in distant places, but lies right in the hands that cherish daily life. In the eyes of Buddhist teachings, the root of suffering is not because life is too difficult, but because the human mind lacks mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a luxury, nor is it only for ascetics. It is simply the ability to see reality as it truly is. When the mind knows enough, everything immediately becomes just right. When the mind knows to stop, what it has immediately becomes more precious. A person who does not understand themselves can hardly understand others, and can even less live peacefully in this ever-changing world. The Buddha taught that to see the ocean, one must step back. To see oneself, one must quiet the mind. Therefore, mindfulness is the act of turning inward to illuminate the inner self, to recognize what needs to be held onto and what should be let go of. A person who is not mindful often lets their mind run ahead of events and lets worry run far beyond reality. They live in an unarrived future, regret a past that is past, and forget that the present is the only place where life exists. When we analyze human psychology deeply, we will clearly see that most of our sufferings do not come from circumstances, but from endless desires. People easily fall into a state of feeling that they lack something, need something more, or must achieve something to feel at peace. The craving mind is like a full glass of water. No matter how much more cool, clear, or precious water you pour in, it will just overflow. Life is the same. Happiness may come, but if our mind has no room, joy is also pushed away. A mind that does not know enough makes us always live in a state of lacking, impatience, and dissatisfaction. One who has one wants two. One who has two wants 10. One who is peaceful wants to surpass others, wants life to unfold according to their will. The more one wants, the more the mouth complains, because what one wants is never enough. That is the reason the Buddha said that the root of all suffering lies in craving. Craving here is not just material desire, but also attachment, longing, and demanding that everything goes one's way. When the mind is full of clinging, words easily become sharp, reproachful, and complaining. Only when the mind is light will the mouth be light, and the human heart will easily feel peace. The human mind that does not know how to stop is like someone running on a long, endless road. They just keep running, keep striving, keep hurrying, unaware that their breath is getting shorter, their heart is getting heavier, and their joy is slowly fading. We cannot let go because we think letting go is losing. We do not stop because we think stopping is being at a disadvantage. We do not know enough because we think knowing enough is restricting our lives. Therefore, some people spend their entire lives in a cycle of worry, fear, and hope. But hope endlessly, and the mind still doesn't find peace because the inner root refuses to settle. When a person does not understand themselves, does not see their own limits, does not know what is necessary, what should be done, and what should be let go of, they will always find life too narrow and their heart too full. There is a very ordinary story, but it contains a great lesson about knowing enough. That is the story of Uncle Too High in a small rural area. Uncle Too spent his entire life farming, hard-working and kind, but he always looked full of worries. He worried about not having enough money, about his house not being repaired, about crop failures, about his children not succeeding. He worried about his health not being what it used to be. Worries clung to him like a shadow. He often sat on his doorstep every afternoon, looking up at the sky. But instead of enjoying the cool breeze or the sound of birds, his heart was always restless. Anyone who met him would hear him complain. He would say that life was so difficult, that everything kept piling on his shoulders. Then, one day, he went to the temple to visit the old Zen master whom he respected. The master silently poured a glass of water to the brim and placed it in front of him. The master said that this glass of water was like his mind. If it was already full of water and he kept wanting to pour more in, it would only overflow. Similarly, when the mind is full of worries and one still wants more peace, how can it be? To pour in more lightness, one must first pour out some worries. Uncle Tu looked at the glass of water and then at himself, suddenly finding the master's words like a gentle needle pricking his anxious heart. He understood that for a long time he had been carrying too many unnecessary things. He worried about things that hadn't happened, worried about things that didn't belong to him, worried even about things that he couldn't change no matter how much he worried. From that day on, he began to practice pouring out worries from himself, first by complaining less, and then by being grateful for what he had. Indeed, when his mind worried less, his mouth also became much lighter. He spoke fewer negative words and complained less about life. People in the neighborhood saw his change, and everyone was happy. Uncle Tu said that since he understood the full glass of water, his life became light as a breath. Rice was still the same meal. The house was still the same house. But his heart was different. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that knowing enough is the greatest wealth in the world. The Buddha said, "One who knows enough is happy even sleeping on the ground. One who does not know enough feels lacking even sleeping on a golden bed." That teaching is not to advise people to abandon ordinary life, but to help them see that the root of happiness lies in the state of the mind. Zen, Master. Thich Nhat Hanh once said that if we know how to cherish one inhale and one exhale, we will find ourselves richer than many people in the world. Just one breath, but it is the foundation of an entire life. As long as there is breath, all hope remains. Similarly, when we are grateful for every meal, every drop of water, every moment with loved ones, we will find that our lives have never lacked anything. These teachings are not just to be read for pleasure, but to remind us to return to living truly in the present. Life is impermanent, so every moment is precious. When we know how to stop, to clearly see the value of every second, the mind naturally settles, the mouth naturally becomes gentler, and the heart naturally opens. The lesson drawn from Uncle Tu Hai's simple story is actually very profound. A glass can only hold more water if we are willing to pour out the old water. The human mind is the same. To have more peace, one must let go of worries. To have more happiness, one must let go of cravings. To speak gentle words, one must cast off anger from the heart. Many people complain that they are not peaceful, but don't realize they themselves are filling every day with worries. They blame their families, blame life, blame circumstances, but refuse to look at how full the glass of water in their mind is. Just practicing letting go a little as simply as Uncle Two, life will naturally become more expansive. Some say that to find peace, one must seek it in the mountains and forests. But in reality, peace is only present when we are willing to look deeply into ourselves. A person who knows enough speaks words light as the wind, and their smile is bright as the sun. They don't complain, don't blame, don't overcompare, because they know that every breath is precious. Every ordinary day is a gift of life. The healing message for you is to return to the present. When you eat a meal, savor it as if it were your last meal, to feel infinite gratitude. When you take a breath, see it as life touching you. When you look at loved ones, look with the eyes of impermanence to see that their presence is a blessing. When you know that nothing lasts forever, you will cherish moments more. Living mindfully is seeing the true value of now. Living contentedly is cherishing what you have. Living with self-understanding and understanding of others is opening your heart so that life has less suffering. May you, from this moment, slow down a little to find peace right where you stand. As long as you breathe, there is still an opportunity to change your life. As long as you are grateful, there is still light to illuminate your mind. As long as you know enough, there is still a door to open to happiness. May you, from now on, live light as the wind, bright as the sun, and calm as the morning lake. On some evenings, as the sun slowly recedes behind the bamboo grove at the end of the village, the shadows of all things become longer and fainter. Just like in life, as one approaches their final years, they realize that everything they once held tightly will eventually be released. Humans live in impermanence, but constantly forget that they are walking on a path where no one knows what tomorrow holds. Precisely because we don't know, we often easily utter angry words, competitive words, thoughtless words that hurt each other. Then, as night falls, sitting alone in a quiet room, we feel something aching in our hearts. That ache doesn't come from the burden of work or life's worries, but often from a single word, accidentally spoken, like a drop of water falling onto a still lake. A word seemingly small, but whose ripples spread endlessly. When we understand impermanence, we realize that words are not just sounds, but karma. Someone asked why older people tend to prefer silence. It's not because they can no longer speak, but because they have seen too much sorrow arise from the mouth. They have witnessed families shattered by arguments, relationships fractured by uncontrolled words, people regretting for a lifetime just a word uttered in anger. Everyone talks about cultivating the mind, but cultivating the mouth is the most difficult thing, because the mind is inside, while the mouth is outside. There are things in our hearts that we know should be endured, should be forgiven. But when the mouth opens, we cannot overcome the fit of anger. Therefore, the ancients said that guarding the mind is precious, but guarding the mouth is even more precious. Only by guarding the mouth can one guard blessings, because the mouth is the gate from which karma emerges. In Buddhism, speech is one of the fundamental precepts. Among the 5 precepts is the precept against false speech. In the Noble Eightfold Path, there is right speech. In the 3 purities of karma, verbal karma stands alongside bodily karma and mental karma. Why is speech emphasized so much? Because speaking a word can create karma faster than action, and often more profoundly than thought. The tongue has no bone, yet it can break a person's heart. Words are light as the wind, yet they can collapse an entire family. Every word we speak is like a pebble thrown into the river of life. Throw a kind pebble, and the river ripples gently and calmly. Throw an angry pebble, and the water will surge into unpredictable, deep eddies. The human psychology is that when given the right to speak, everyone wants to speak to their satisfaction. Young people are easily short-tempered, so they speak quickly. People who are sad easily complain, so they speak harshly. People who are afraid easily become defensive, so they speak sharply. People who are envious easily judge, so they speak falsely. Humans speak from the mind, not from wisdom. When the mind is chaotic, the mouth is chaotic. When the mind is calm, the mouth is kind. But most of us open our mouths before we even perceive how our mind is agitated. Buddhist teachings state that all words originate from a thought in the mind. If that thought is wholesome, the words are wholesome. If that thought is unwholesome, the words are unwholesome. If that thought is uneasy, the words will make others uneasy as well. A person who does not know how to guard their mouth is like a person walking on a road without knowing there is a deep pit ahead. They keep walking, keep talking, keep speaking carelessly, and only regret it when they fall. Among the myriad lessons in life, perhaps the lesson about words is the one we have to pay the most to understand. Some lose a friendship just because of a word spoken in annoyance. Some lose a loved one just because of thoughtless words repeated over and over. Some create great karma for themselves just because they could not control their mouth for a moment. We often think that words are just passing wind. In reality, words have weight. Every word we utter carries the energy of the mind. That energy will return to us when the conditions are ripe. Speaking good creates blessings. Speaking evil creates karma. Speaking kind words sows seeds of peace. Speaking hurtful words sows seeds of suffering. Life does not overlook any word we speak. There is a story that many elderly people in the countryside often recount to remind themselves to guard their mouths. It is the story of Mrs. Ba in a small neighborhood long ago. She was a diligent, kind woman, but there was always sadness in her house because she often got angry and scolded her children and grandchildren very harshly. Sometimes, just because a bowl of rice was spilled, or because a grandchild was mischievous, she would yell, making the whole house fall silent. Her children grew up distant and hurt because of those unnecessary words. When she grew old, her eyes faded. Her steps slowed. She needed the care of her children and grandchildren. At that time, the children she had scolded years ago began to say words that hurt her heart. They were not intentionally disrespectful, but because their hearts already contained many wounds from their mother's words from before. Mrs. Ba listened and shed tears. She said that old people needed warmth the most, but young people, having been scolded too much, could no longer soften their hearts. She regretted it, but it was too late. The words of the past, which seemed to have vanished, turned out to still be there, just waiting for an opportunity to return. One time, she went to the temple and confessed to the venerable master that she was unhappy because her children were cold towards her. The master only said one sentence that stunned her. He said that nothing in this world disappears naturally, It only returns to its origin. Her children's words were echoes returning from the words she had once uttered. She sat for a very long time in the temple courtyard, watching the leaves fall. Leaves fall because of the wind, but the wind also comes from the movements of heaven and earth. Children speaking back is not because they want to, but because of the karmic conditions of the words she had sown. When she understood that, she began to reform her speech. Although she was old, every day she practiced speaking gentler words. Every time she wanted to yell, she would take a deep breath and then remain silent, as the master had instructed. Gradually, her children and grandchildren sensed the change and became closer to her. One cannot change the past, but one can change the present to transform the future. The story of Mrs. Ba is just a small fragment. In countless lives, people carry lessons about verbal karma. People can make mistakes in many things, but mistakes in words are often the hardest to correct. The Buddha once taught that words are like honey. If spoken skillfully, they are sweet like honey. If spoken incorrectly, they can cause pain like venom. In the Dhammapada, it is said, "Whoever uses loving speech is cherished by everyone, like bees seeking fragrant flowers. But poisonous words cause listeners to harbor resentment and sow bad karma for oneself. A kind word can resolve enmity, while a malicious word can escalate enmity, like fire meeting wind. Words, therefore, are never just words, but the depth of a mind." Once, a Zen master said that cultivating the body is easier than cultivating the mind, and cultivating the mind is easier than cultivating the mouth. The disciple was surprised and asked, "Why?" The master replied that the body is easy to control because it is tangible. It can be changed with training. The mind, though intangible, a person who practices meditation can see thoughts arising, but the mouth is directly linked to emotions. When happy, one talks a lot. When sad, one wants to talk. When angry, one wants to talk even more. Therefore, the mouth is where people most easily lose control. To guard the mouth requires diligent effort, mindfulness, and learning how to be silent without being suppressed. Guarding the mouth is guarding karma. Guarding karma is guarding blessings. Guarding blessings is guarding peace. The older one gets, the more one values blessings. Blessings are not something distant, but small joys in life. Health is a blessing. A stable family is a blessing. Having loved ones is a blessing. Meeting kind people at work is a blessing. A peaceful meal is a blessing. Sound sleep is a blessing. But blessings are easily lost if we do not guard our mouths. A hurtful word can make a good person turn away from us. An angry word can fracture a family bond. An outburst can make us lose a good karmic connection. Blessings come from the heart, but take shape through the mouth. Guarding the mouth means preserving the beautiful things we have. There is a small story often told in meditation retreat pits to remind people of the power of words. One day, a young man came to the master and confessed that he had hurt others with angry words. He wanted to atone, but didn't know how. The master gave him a bag of cotton fluff and instructed, "Go all over the village, scatter handfuls of fluff at every crossroads, then come back tomorrow." The young man did as he was told. The next day, he returned to the master. The master told him to collect all the cotton fluff. He cried out in panic, "It's impossible. The wind has carried them everywhere." The master looked at him and said that words are also like those handfuls of fluff. Once uttered, they follow the wind and fly in all directions. They cannot be retrieved. The only way is to be careful from the very beginning. That is also why the ancients taught, sow words like flowers, not like knives. A kind word can save a person's life. Sometimes just one warm word at the right moment gives the listener renewed faith to continue. Conversely, sometimes just one malicious word makes the listener carry pain for an entire lifetime. In life, everyone has moments of weakness, times when they need a word of encouragement more than ever. Therefore, to be able to speak kind words is to sow blessings for both ourselves and others. It is a gift that requires no money, no effort, but can change another person's life for the better. The final lesson on this journey is to understand that silence is not weakness, but strength. Silence is not for enduring, but for maintaining inner peace. Silence is not avoidance, but choosing what is worth saying. Silence is not escaping the world, but keeping the mind from being swept away by the chaos of the world. When we know how to guard our mouth, we are clear enough to see everything with more open eyes. We do not react, but respond. We do not judge, but understand. We do not speak to win, but to be at peace. That is wisdom in speech. It is cultivation in every daily breath. And when we know how to use words like blooming flowers, life will bloom accordingly. Flowers do not need to compete with the wind, do not need to vie for light with anyone. Simply emitting their fragrance is enough. A person who knows how to cultivate their speech is also like a flower. Wherever they are, they make people feel at ease. In any circumstance, they sow peace. Because peace does not come from the outside, but from the very place where our mouth knows to stop before words hurt someone. Finally, I hope that the listener can maintain a gentler soul every day. When the mind settles, words also know to soften. When words soften, life will have much less suffering. Let every word you speak be a small lamp illuminating the path, not a fire that fuels another's suffering. Let your words become green leaves on a branch, bringing life instead of causing more sorrow to fall. And remember that guarding your mouth is guarding your blessings. And with enough blessings, life naturally finds peace. To conclude this entire journey, I send you a few gentle words, like a breath, that every day we are still able to wake up, still see each other, still speak to each other. That is already a blessing. Guard your words as you would good seeds in the garden of your mind. Speak what is truthful and kind. Choose to bring peace to others, rather than hurting them. When the mouth is kind, the mind is clear. When the mind is clear, the path of life will also be clear. May you always be at peace in every word and every step in this impermanent life. Impermanent.